And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel, and the all-new MNC Nation. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. All right, we've got a lot to get to today. We're going to start off with this bizarre lab, Chinese lab, maybe not Chinese lab, but kind of a Chinese lab. What kind of a lab is it that was found in California? Very weird story. And while they have covered it on the news, I don't think that they're giving it the proper attention. This is my personal opinion on it, so we'll break it down for you. There's some questions that I can answer for you today that we could not answer a couple of days ago when the story broke. A bunch of people over the weekend were like, yo, they found a Chinese lab in California. And so I looking at it, and first thing I'm thinking of is it really a Chinese lab? And, well, we have some answers on that, and I think it's going to freak you out. But when you pair that with another Chinese story that I have today, it starts to make a little bit more sense, which is why I think the news media is not doing anybody any favors by not making this the wall-to-wall primary story of the day. I want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, Columbia City. Go to rbcarcompany.com to learn more. Okay, so let's roll through this. Now, I want you to know I've got 5 articles in front of me, and the reason I have 5 articles in front of me is I'm going to go over this. Well, I should say 4 articles and then the actual company information. Okay, let's put it that way. And the reason I'm doing that is because we're going to slowly kind of answer some questions here. So for those of you who do not know, there was an illegal lab that was found in California. Now, this is basically an abandoned building, and people were operating an illegal laboratory inside of this abandoned building. The only reason that we know about it is code enforcement saw a hose coming out of a hole in a wall. Okay, there's no hose bib. There was a hose that was like somebody had taken a hole saw, drilled through the wall, and they put a hose through it. So the code enforcement person saw that and said, that's not right, and did a little investigating, and wouldn't you know it, they found an entire bio lab inside of this abandoned building in Reedley, California. So this is in Fresno County, which reminds me I should probably reach out to a friend of mine in Fresno. I should probably do that. I haven't had time. So it's a bizarre story if you haven't seen this or heard this. This is the Federalist Papers. We'll start there. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. In the Fresno County, California city of Reedley, officials are saying that a building that was supposed to be abandoned was instead home to roughly 1,000 bioengineered mice, human blood, and biohazardous chemicals. Oh, it gets worse. Not only that, but KSEE-TV, now what affiliate are they? Let me find out. Because you have to do a lot of jumping around here to kind of get the official word and that sort of thing. Well, okay, why is this? CBS. Okay, they're a CBS affiliate. A lot of the stations in California do weird stuff, so it's like some of them don't look like real news outlets, and you got to kind of jump around and figure it out. So anyway, so again, human blood, biohazardous chemicals, 1,000 bioengineered mice. But like I said, it gets worse. KSEE-TV reports that as per court documents, officials for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention found at least 20 potentially infectious viral, bacterial, and parasitic agents, including, but not limited to, E. coli, malaria, and COVID. This is an unusual situation. I've been in government for 25 years. I've never seen anything like this, says the Reedley city manager, Nicole Ziba. This was an oft-echoed statement. I've never seen this in my 26-year career with the county of Fresno, says Joe Prada, the assistant director for the Fresno County Department of Public Health. Speaking to Mid-Valley Times, Prado said 26 years with the county of Fresno, and I've never come across this situation, nor have I ever heard of my counterparts dealing with a situation like this. The investigation began in March when Reedley code enforcement officers looked into a warehouse with a garden hose that was attached illegally. Now, the way that the news media has been kind of writing that, oh yeah, there's this garden hose was attached. It makes people kind of seem like was somebody just, I don't know, running a garden hose through a window, or was it hooked up to a hose bib, or what was weird about it? No, there was a hole in the wall that was the exact diameter of the garden hose, and the garden hose was like through the hole in the wall. It was completely out of place. So for those of you who are wondering, like, why would that be a red flag? When you see the picture of it, it's a red flag. It doesn't look like it belongs there. It was pretty clear right off the bat that something was going on. We didn't have a business license for, Zeba said. They didn't have any city approvals. That building was supposed to be vacant. Okay. For the record, this all has ties to my hometown. We're in Reedley, California right now. We will border hop a couple of times here, okay? So you're going to have to bear with me. This is a crazy story. Officers left the property due to the lack of a warrant, but with the garden hose and a number of building code violations led to officers eventually putting unsafe to occupy signs around the property and issuing an order for the people who were occupying it to leave. So you're code enforcement. You're driving around doing whatever. You notice a weird hose sticking out of a wall of a building, and you're like, what? Well, what's going on there? You start looking at it, find out that's a vacant building, yet there's people inside of a vacant building. And then you look in there and you find out that there's a lab in there, but there's nothing you can do. Nothing you can do because you didn't have a warrant. So now you have to get creative in order to find code violations for the building itself, in order to put the unsafe to occupy signs up there, in order to kick the people who have an illegal biolab inside of an abandoned building inside of Reedley, California. That's the only way that they could get them out. Again, further proof, government screws everything up. Initially, the Fresno County Department of Public Health was investigating the case, but in the end, the CDC and the FBI and numerous state agencies became involved. You'll understand why. I mean, the COVID stuff and the malaria stuff and everything else, that's bad enough. But you'll understand why the FBI ends up getting involved here. And it's not just because this is a federal type case. It actually ends up dealing with China. We'll get to that here in a minute. What they found was genuinely shocking. According to court documents, the Mid-Valley Times reported investigators discovered that one room of the warehouse was used to produce COVID-19 and pregnancy tests. They were manufacturing COVID and pregnancy tests. In other rooms, investigators found blood, tissue, and other bodily fluid samples. They also found thousands of vials that contained, quote, unlabeled fluids. And then they found the mice. It was just under 1,000 mice. They had to euthanize about 773. They said 178 of them are already dead. Now, the company that moved equipment into the warehouse was identified as a Nevada-based firm, Prestige Biotech, Inc. Okay. So we've got a company. We can look at their business records. We can look at all sorts of things. And it gets weird. It's already odd, but it gets even more weird, folks. And so for some of you over the weekend who had some questions like, is this a Chinese-funded lab? We probably have some answers to that coming up in just a couple of minutes. I'm Casey Hendrickson. You're listening to News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel, and the all-new MNC Nation. All right, so Chinese lab. The company that moved equipment into the warehouse that was found in California was identified as a Nevada-based firm, Prestige Biotech, Inc. Wang Xiaolin was the Prestige representative on the site. He told investigators that, quote, these mice were genetically engineered to catch and carry the COVID-19 virus. I don't know how much you know about history and diseases and stuff, but boy, there is one or two illnesses that caused massive, catastrophic pandemonium that were carried by rodents. Just something to throw out there. The mice, investigators say, were housed under inhumane conditions. However, an email exchange between Prado and David He, who was allegedly a representative for the company, went nowhere. The exchange, which began on May 31st and ended on June 13th, Prado asked for documentation involving why the company was storing infectious agents, whether it was disposing medical waste via a licensed firm, and how it would respond to orders from the city. They, meaning Prestige Biotech, completely avoided the questions, Prado said. This individual, that's his name, he, was either unaware or was intentionally trying to mislead us. Okay. So, where does that leave us right now, just in the first article here? Well, we've got an illegal lab that is owned by a company based in Nevada, but the lab is operating illegally in California, in Fresno County, at an abandoned building. They don't have the proper license in place. They're not cooperating with the investigators. They're ignoring all questions. There were infectious agents inside the lab. They were manufacturing COVID and pregnancy tests, and they genetically modified about 1,000 mice to get and carry COVID. Yeah, little concerning, don't you think? Okie dokie. Let's move on to the next article in Ars Technica. Officials bust illegal lab containing 20 infectious agents. Oh, boy. 20. Okay. COVID is one. HIV is another. And herpes is another. Every article we go through, there's like different things that were discovered at this lab. According to court documents obtained by NBC News, city officials inspected the warehouse located in Reedley, southeast of Fresno, on March 3rd. County health officials then inspected the facility on March 16th. What they found reportedly shocked them. This is an unusual situation. I've been in government for 25 years, never seen anything like this. That's the city manager, Nicole Ziba, which we told you about earlier. There were rooms with vessels of liquid and various apparatus. Fresno County Public Health staff also observed blood, tissue, and other bodily fluid samples and serums and thousands of vials of unlabeled fluids and unspecified biological material. According to the court documents, mice were kept in inhumane conditions. And let's see, a criminal investigation is ongoing. The tenant of the warehouse is listed as Prestige Biotech. And again, they are a firm in Nevada. But the main reason for the Ars Technica article is they also had not just COVID, but HIV and herpes. Okay, let's go to the California Globe. Mysterious COVID lab uncovered in the city of Reedley, California. All right. Why would a COVID lab run by a shady Chinese company be operating in Reedley, California, in the central San Joaquin Valley? The lab, which is supposed to be an empty building, was discovered by Reedley City code enforcement officers when, again, they saw the garden hose thing. Darren Frazier at the Mid-Valley Times reported earlier this week that the building has been illegally operated since October of 2022 by Wang Xiaolin of Prestige Biotech, and the lab was used to produce COVID-19 tests and pregnancy tests, as well as, again, some other stuff. What else do we have here? Some of the stuff is just a rerun. I don't really need to tell you some of it. So here's a few questions that were listed in the California Globe. Why was a Chinese company making COVID-19 tests in California? Where were these tests to be used? Were they to be used by California public health agencies, medical groups, and hospitals, etc.? Is the California Department of Public Health involved, and who authorized the lab? Now, again, we don't have a lot of this stuff. So some of the other things that we know that are in the viral agents, chlamydia, E. coli, strep, hepatitis B and C, herpes 1 and 5, and rubella. They also found samples of malaria, which we mentioned earlier. Court documents identify Jiquin Yao, and again, I probably butchered that. No, I guarantee you I butchered that. As the alleged president of Prestige, neither Reedley nor the FCDPH was able to obtain from Yao any substantive information regarding Prestige Biotech or why infectious agents and mice were being stored at 850 I Street, other than to say that the company was developing diagnostic testing kits. Now, again, the cover story appears to be they were developing testing kits, and so they were infecting these mice with these agents in order to see if the testing kit would detect the virus in the mice. That's the cover story. I don't know why we need all of these testing kits for these various illnesses. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense considering we already have tests for them, but I digress. In February of 2021, about the, as reported, this is California Globe, as we reported in February 2021 about the thousands of inconclusive test results coming out of Governor Gavin Newsom's $100 million COVID-19 testing lab with a $1.7 billion contract with Perk and Elmer. Is anything about the COVID-19 virus true, or is this the biggest political manipulation this country has ever seen? So the California Globe is basically tying this to other cases where they found these bogus testing kits that the government was paying for and wondering if maybe this has something to do with that. Okay, let's go over to Not the Beat. An illegal Fresno County laboratory in a dirty warehouse just got raided and shut down by the feds. Usually when you hear a statement like that, you think it must have been drugs, fentanyl, meth, some other designer drug, but this was different. They were experimenting with multiple infectious diseases on rats, including coronavirus, HIV, hepatitis, and herpes. Let's not forget about the clap. So they go through the same old stuff that we have. They did publish some photos so you can actually kind of see some of the stuff that's in there. And again, there's like thousands of vials of material that are not labeled. We have no idea what it is. The equipment actually belonged to a now long defunct company called Universal Meditech. And Prestige Biotech had taken possession of it as a creditor after bankruptcy. There's more to this. Wait till we dive into the business records. Boy, it gets a little stranger. Got more coming up. 95.3 MNC News Time, 3:31. Time to check out Impress Jewelry Creations, creating meaningful jewelry for the moments that last a lifetime.
This is...
So real quick, and then we're going to head into the other story about China that I think kind of ties in with this weird biolab that was discovered in California. Now, I don't have, there's some people on the live stream have some very good questions. You got a bunch of refrigerators and stuff like that happening in this abandoned building. What's the power situation like? That I don't know. I don't know if they were running generators or how they were providing power there, because it's a fair point that if power is, operating all of this equipment, and this is on the grids, and how is it that the city officials did not know it was happening? I think that is a fair point. That is an absolutely fair point. So here's what we know. Prestige Biotech, Inc. is based in Nevada, specifically Las Vegas, my hometown. So when you look at the business information for company contacts, Zhaoqun Yao is the director, okay, and the president of the company. That's like honcho guy, okay? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So there's like 14 contacts for him and 4 contacts for Shaolin Wang. Now, Shaolin Wang is an accountant who is based in Chinatown in Las Vegas. And he looks like every stereotypical Chinese spy that you would ever assume. Old guy, just kind of the old style photography and everything else. Now, Zhaoqun Yao, don't know much about him, but a lot of these addresses that are listed as his position or his contact address, because he's got them on Flamingo, on Valley View, on Charleston, and I know that doesn't mean much to any of you guys. Those are all major streets throughout the city. Some are close to Chinatown and others are not. One of them is a residential house. The others are businesses, which could be mailboxes. I looked at a couple of the street views on a couple of them, and I couldn't see any kind of a postal service sort of a thing. So I don't know exactly what's happening here, but there's numerous addresses listed for this individual. Now, the registered agent for the company is Barry Zhang and CPA and Associates, which are located on Wynn Road. And that is, again, where you're starting to run into it's weird stuff, the way that this is all organized. So many addresses for the same people, doesn't pass the smell test. The fact that this thing went on for so long without getting caught really should be concerning. But then there's this other thing here. I don't know if you noticed, but over the weekend, again, another huge story broke with the Defense Department. In a significant security development, U.S. officials are currently engaged in an intensive search for malware believed to have been implanted by Chinese hackers into the critical American infrastructure. The malware's purpose, according to authorities, is to disrupt U.S. military operations in the event of an attack on Taiwan by the communist nation. The infiltration of the malicious computer code occurred well over a year ago, but it was only detected by Microsoft back in May. Now, operating under the assumption that this is a true story and that this isn't, a psyop, you got a weird biolab that is clearly tied to Chinese individuals, okay? To what extent China is involved, we don't yet know. But we do know that the Chinese operate these secret entities in the United States. We know that they operate these secret police offices in the United States. It would make sense that this company would be tied to China. Okay? I have to stop, as my responsibility as a host, I have to stop just short of telling you definitively that it is. What I can tell you are the individuals involved are all Chinese. That's what I can tell you. The lab is illegal. The lab was dealing with infectious pathogens, many of which are considered to be, potential scary bioweapons in the future. There doesn't appear to be any real purpose to conducting this research because it doesn't seem to pass the smell test at all that they would be developing testing kits for all of these agents because we already have testing kits for all of these agents. So it doesn't make sense that that would be their business. So why are they doing this in secret and really kind of cobbling together this secret lab? This is what spy cells, terrorist cells, things like that do. Okay, it's not what a biotech firm that is regulated by the federal government does. None of this passes the smell test. But I can't definitively tell you that the Chinese Communist Party is overseeing that operation because we haven't seen that connection yet. But if you read between the lines, I think most of you are going to be able to jump to that conclusion, and that would be certainly understandable. Then you have this story here. And if this story is true as well, then you've got the Chinese Communist Party implanting malware in our defense infrastructure to prevent an attack on Taiwan while simultaneously doing something weird with rodents and genetically engineering them to catch and spread COVID, which you set the mice loose, right? You set the rodent population out. Next thing you know, in the middle of an attack on Taiwan, there's an outbreak of a bunch of different diseases in the United States. It could cause chaos. It could be a way to get us distracted until they take Taiwan. Remember, their goal is going to be very similar to what the Soviet Union's goal was during the Cold War. They have to take Europe before we get mobilized. If we get mobilized, the Soviets knew that they were done for. So the goal was to sweep across Europe as fast as possible, capture England before we could mobilize into Iceland and Greenland. And that was their only chance. They were hoping that they could solidify Europe before the United States geared up for war. And that if the United States was not able to repel an invasion of Europe, then the United States just wouldn't get involved. We'd be like, all right, well, Europe had a good run, but Europe's gone. I believe that China has a very similar strategy. They have to take Taiwan fast before we mobilize. And if they can do that, their hope is that we don't get involved. Because China knows if we do get involved, they're toast. They know that. So it's all about speed. So if you can cause chaos, remember we talked about the whole, there's a bunch of Chinese spies inside the United States to run around and hit train tracks and stuff like that. We've arrested several of them. But the whole goal is to just cause disruptions behind our lines and that sort of thing. So that way we're all focused on stuff over here while that is happening over there. I mean, one of those could theoretically be, a massive outbreak of disease. I'm not saying definitively that's what happened, but it's certainly something that has to be war gamed out, and I'm sure that they do, but you have to at least look at this lab in context with what we're dealing with software here. Everything is designed to slow us down. And look, even the America-hating people out there have to understand this basic fact. Nobody can actually go toe-to-toe with us if we choose to actually fight a war. That's just a statistical, factual reality. If we choose to actually fight a war, not do this low-intensity conflict stuff, but if we actually chose to fight a war, there isn't anybody who can hold up to us for any length of time, and everybody knows that. So the goal is to act as fast as possible and turn public opinion against us. So when we do these things because we value civilian lives, oftentimes our own propaganda, because we inevitably have hate America first voters and things like that in the United States that will inevitably make a big issue of it. The whole point is to just take away the will to fight because people don't want to get involved because it's bad and that sort of thing, or to do it very fast before we get mobilized and hope that we just decide not to. So very interesting stuff going on, but pay attention to this Chinese lab story because I think it's a very, very big story, and it really isn't. It's getting attention, don't get me wrong. It's getting attention because it's odd, but the fact that it's not the leading story every single day is bizarre and crazy to me because it's a way bigger, I know, it's a way bigger story than even Hunter Biden, guys, but we're not having it treated that way. All right, we got more coming up. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel, and the all-new MNC Nation.